And the approach which I'm trying to encourage colleagues in the region to adopt is based upon the medical rounds model. For excuse me, for 12 years I taught at the University of Cambridge, and one of the interesting things about sort of medical education at Cambridge is that the top professor, the Regius Professor of Medicine, every week conducts what's called the Grand Round, and this person, not normally is a bloke, unfortunately, leads the consultants and the trainee doctors around the hospital, looking at patients, talking to patients, diagnosing, and then talking about how we can actually improve the condition of the patient. And I think that's most probably the modality that we should be beginning to adopt. There are two key skills, it seems to me, for professionals. One is they're very good at diagnosis, right? What is going on in this school? And then what do we do in order to help improve and transform it? Yeah? And that for me is about developing a language of practice about education and about educational reform. We are all doing that in our own schools, but if we can actually develop a way of working collectively and learning from each other, then we're going to become increasingly powerful, I think, and increasingly self-sustaining. So I want to try, and I'm talking to colleagues next week before we return, about how we can actually develop this more collaborative way of working. Those of you who were at the races on Wednesday, well, I hope will recall the last slide I showed in my presentation, the email I had from Sam Stringfield, where he talked about, okay, I may know something about school improvement, but you are the world's experts on your own schools. Unless we co-construct this together, we're not going to make any progress. Anyway, we're not going to make any further progress, it seems to me. So I wanted just to say that really about, and I'm trying to use today as a shift in the way of working. And I think it was quite helpful yesterday. I think we had a different tone, I think, at the end of the day yesterday. And you've got to tell us whether you think this is a more useful approach, and you've got to keep us honest as well to these intentions. Lena and myself and John, if he appears, and the regional network leaders. And I just on the screen there, I deliberately have put the phrase on the screen for the workshop today with the phrase "unleashing greatness." When I worked for the British government and when I worked for other governments in terms of school reform, part of the diagnosis is to say, well, what sort of condition is the educational system in? And I have been working in some educational systems which are actually quite awful, quite dreadful. And in order to bring an awful system up to adequate, there are certain things you have to do. And often you've got to be very, very direct and very interventionist and very prescriptive and top down. But when you try to take a system like yours, which is better than adequate, in fact is quite good, as we move from adequate to good and then from good to great, you can't mandate greatness. You can't tell people how to become great. We have to, and the phrase there is to unleash greatness, and we unleash it through actually working together. So that, I hope, is a few words about signaling a new intent in terms of the way that we're working together. Now, we can't today, and what I hope increasingly is that we can actually have these sessions in schools, so we can actually look at practice as we are actually working together. But today we can't obviously go into a school. We're here. But I want to try and model this new way of working by this morning sharing with you a range of examples of schools which I think are exhibiting the types of characteristics that we want to emulate. And I'm going to be drawing data from a number of different sources. I'm going to be talking about referring to the study that Vic Zabar and Graham Harrison Marshall talked about on Wednesday, the study of 8 outstanding schools in Victoria, which, as you know, were a combination of both primary and secondary schools. I want to draw on a similar study that has just been conducted in England, where we've looked at 12 secondary schools which have excelled against the odds, have broken the cycle of poverty as being a determinant of educational success.